He was a handsome young father turned social justice warrior.
He had two twin daughters.
He was very active in the LGBTQ community of Kansas City.
He affected each person, and everyone loved him.
So when his life is taken too soon, the entire community is desperate for answers.
The shooter was within a foot of him when the bullet was fired.
His cell phone was gone.
Was this something planned?
It was the most horrific thing I've ever had to endure or encounter.
The investigation into his death will unveil a sinister plot that spiraled out of control.
They were flirting back and forth.
What we need you to do is just explain to us why your number is in his phone.
I never talked to the guy or texted the guy in my life.
He says this is something that we can keep between us.
What made you want to take him away from us? Just why?
Detectives just tell him point blank, you're full of...
You were there.
He didn't want to be a snitch, but he couldn't take the heat any longer.
Police, open up!
This story is so unbelievable.
Wait!
He was going to do whatever he needed to evade arrest.
October 30th, 2014, Kansas City, Missouri. There's an exciting buzz in the air as local families prepare to celebrate Halloween.
Halloween is a lot of fun in Kansas City. In a matter of hours, the city will be bursting with trick-or-treaters, wild parties, and haunted houses.
But for local law enforcement, this time of year also means an uptick in crime.
Kansas City, like many other large metropolitan cities, has a crime issue. What's somewhat unique about Kansas City in particular is that much of our violent crime is committed by younger individuals.
We annually make the list of top cities for crime and violence.
So when gunshots ring out at 1 a.m. on Kansas City's south side, patrol officers are ready to spring into action.
Officers responded to the area where those gunshots were.
This is a dangerous area of Kansas City. The officers knew that this particular area was a place where drugs were commonly sold, used, and things of that nature.
A gold-colored sedan catches the officer's attention.
It was running with its lights on and all the doors were shut.
Officers cautiously approach the vehicle.
Jackson County Sheriff's Department, step out with your hands up.
They issue instruction to the occupant of the vehicle, come out.
Nothing happens. They try yelling louder.
Step out.
But no one comes out of the vehicle.
Eventually, one of the officers opens the driver's door.
They see what can only be described as a deceased individual with an apparent gunshot wound to his head.
Dispatch, go ahead and start homicide. We got 110-7.
Homicide detectives are on the scene within minutes.
They know they have a dead body, and now they want to identify that body.
Fortunately, the victim's wallet is still inside the car.
In his wallet, they find the driver's license, and that's when they're able to identify him as Mr. Deontay Green.
22-year-old Deontay Green always exuded love and light.
To know him was to love him. He had a heart of gold.
Deontay was a ball of energy. Like, he was so energetic. Goofy, play all day. He was himself at all times.
He was an active member in the community. He was a part of the Kansas City Marching Cobras. He was a part of the Kansas City Falcons, another drill team.
He had style. He used to dress from head to toe.
But nothing meant more to Deontay than his twin daughters, Diana and Tiana.
They were the center of his life.
You just look at them and you can see Deontay.
When we were with him, it would just be a fun moment. Like we'll laugh, play around, take pictures, just hang out.
When it came to us, it was about us.
Deontay and his high school sweetheart, Kiana Rice, had become parents when they were still teenagers.
Even though their relationship fizzled out, they stayed close for their girls.
They was very good co-parenting the kids. They've been knowing each other all their lives, so they were like two peas in a pod. They were best friends.
By the fall of 2014, Deontay was ready to find love again.
Deontay was an openly bisexual man and began looking for love online.
He was looking for these avenues to try and find ways to connect with people, whether it be social media via Facebook or what have you.
He was very active in the LGBTQ community of Kansas City.
And for Deontay, part of being a member of the LGBTQ plus community meant giving back.
Deontay was a part of the House of Cavalli. He was also a part of Authentic. Those two organizations by itself, I can just go on and on about the different things that they've done. They're very active in their community as far as feeding the homeless, as far as going to go clean up communities. Wherever he could have his hand in, he was in.
He affected each person, and everyone loved him.
So how did he end up on the other side of town with a bullet to the head?
Detectives started to investigate the crime scene to see if there were any clues that may lead them to who was the killer of this young man.
They see an entry wound to the right of his right eye, but no exit wound.
There was stippling around the gunshot wound.
When a gunshot is fired, if you are close enough to the target, it will actually leave stippling, which are small burn marks that are left by the gunpowder. And so that would indicate that the shooter was within approximately a foot of Deontay when the bullet was fired.
Detectives believe the shooter fired their gun from the back seat of the vehicle.
On the floorboard of the back seat, they find a shell casing, and the caliber of that shell casing is what's called a 400 Korban.
The only way you can fire the 400 Korban round is with a modified 45 caliber handgun.
400 Korban isn't a very common round. It's certainly not a very common round that you see used in criminal acts.
Was Deontay the unfortunate victim of a robbery gone wrong?
Certainly, if it was a robbery, the perpetrators would want to take anything of value that they could find.
But he still has his wallet.
That certainly indicated that this wasn't just your run-of-the-mill robbery.
However, there is one key item missing.
His cell phone was gone. Why would the killer take his phone and not his wallet?
"22-year-old father of two, Deontay Green, was ready to find love again.
He had two twin daughters, but the relationship with their mother turned out to be more like a friendship.
He was an openly bisexual man. He was very active in the LGBTQ community of Kansas City.
But just after 1 a.m. on October 31st, 2014, investigators have found Deontay on Kansas City's seedy South Side with a gunshot wound to the head.
It was a mystery how Deontay even ended up in this part of town. He was an upstanding guy.
Was this a robbery? Was this somebody he knew? Was this an isolated incident? Was this something planned?
Oddly enough, the killer appeared to take his cell phone and not his wallet. Why would they do that if this was a robbery?
Before they can answer that question, detectives have the grim task of notifying Deontay's loved ones of what's transpired.
I guess it was about 11 a.m. in the morning. A knock is at the door, and there are two detectives. And they're asking me if Deontay Green lives here. Yes.
Yes, I'm his mother. He's been living with me recently.
That's when detectives deliver the heartbreaking news.
All I can remember him saying is, Miss Green, your son was murdered. I don't know what happened after that.
Murdered last night.
I'm hurt and I'm in disbelief. Like, no, not my son. It was the most horrific thing I've ever had to endure or encounter.
Where did you find him?
On the south side, in an area with a lot of crime and drug activity.
Was Deontay involved in any kind of illegal drugs?
Ms. Green was very surprised over the question.
Absolutely not.
My son didn't do drugs. I did everything within me to make sure the streets don't swallow him up. He didn't hang around that type of crowd. I'm puzzled as to what he was even doing down there.
On the south side. Deontay was an outstanding citizen. It was a part of town that Deontay Green would not otherwise have been in, unless somebody else told him to go there.
Can you think of any reason why someone would want to harm your son?
I drew a blank because I couldn't think of not one individual that would want to harm him in such a manner. He didn't have any enemies.
He was just a likable person that everybody liked because he tried to do the right thing all the time.
I told them if I had to point a finger or anything, it was because of his sexuality, him being bisexual.
Was Deontay the victim of a callous hate crime?
Homophobia is still an open discussion within this society, and not everybody seems to understand the dynamics around it. So when Deontay was killed, police had to take this into account with their investigation.
When was the last time you saw your son?
Last night around 11.
Wow.
Yeah.
He say, Mom, I'm about to go grab something to eat with some friends. And I say, okay, love you, be good. And he said, okay, I love you too. I'll be back.
All right, see you later, Mama.
Okay.
My son told me he was coming back to me.
Detectives now wonder if the friends Deontay said he was going out with that night turned out to be killers.
Do you have names for the individuals he was going to hang out with?
Unfortunately, no.
Thank you so much for your time, Miss Green. And again, we're so sorry for your loss.
Thank you, detectives.
As investigators scour Kansas City for Deontay's killer, news of his death echoes throughout the community.
Couple of days after his death, we did a memorial.
I honestly didn't think that I would walk into a memorial with over 300 people. It was huge. It was really beautiful because a lot of people that was there has showed how much they cared and loved him.
The outpour of love and support that the city showed my family and I spoke volumes of who Deontay was.
For investigators, A. Green.
They were really having trouble piecing together how and why this happened.
Until a young man named Greg Bailey shows up at the station to speak with them.
What can I do for you?
This gentleman has some information for you.
Okay, come on in.
Greg was Deontay's good friend, and he told detectives that he might have some vital information about the last hours of his life.
He is really the person who broke the case open for the most part.
Okay, Greg, tell us what you know.
Greg tells detectives that on the night of the 30th, Deontay made plans to meet up with a mysterious young man he'd met on Facebook.
He didn't know the name of the individual that Deontay was meeting up with, but Deontay had described him as cute and having dreads.
Deontay told him that there was something about this guy in this picture that pulled him in.
However, was Deontay's handsome suitor really a wolf in sheep's clothing?
He said we could meet up, but there's something I need you to bring me.
He says this is something that we can keep between us.
Kansas City detectives investigating the murder of 22-year-old Deontay Green are finally getting their first lead, thanks to Deontay's best friend, Greg Bailey.
He said Deontay was looking to meet up with a mysterious individual on the night of the 30th.
They've been talking online. On Facebook?
But according to Greg, Deontay's mysterious suitor had a stipulation for their meetup.
He said we could meet up, but there's something I need you to bring me.
The guy requested that Deontay would bring some marijuana with him.
Deontay didn't do drugs, wasn't into it, so he told the man if he brought the money and knew somewhere to go get the weed, that he would take him.
The whole thing seemed kind of sketchy to me. I told Deontay it was a bad idea.
He tried to discourage him. Deontay Green decided to go anyway.
Greg tells detectives Deontay called him around midnight after he arrived to meet his date.
He still hasn't arrived yet?
No, I'm still sitting here, waiting.
And then Deontay started to see a guy walking towards the car.
But the man wasn't alone.
Wait, there's another guy.
Another guy?
It was another guy coming out with them, and he didn't know what he was coming out for.
Hey, you doing okay? Yeah, how are you? Good. Sorry, we actually got to go to the gas station first to get cash, if that's okay. Oh, yeah. That's okay, you sure? Yeah. Okay, all right. Yeah. Thank you, man, thank you. Hey, Greg, I'll call you later, okay?
Be careful. Just call me later.
After that, Greg never heard from his best friend again.
After speaking with Greg, investigators are eager to access Deontay's social media account to see exactly who he was messaging to meet up with that night.
Law enforcement obtains a search warrant for the Facebook account of Deontay Green.
When they logged in, they noticed that Deontay had a ton of friends. It was obvious that Deontay was very well liked.
But it doesn't take long for them to locate the message thread they are looking for.
They can see that there is communication between Deontay Green and an individual with the Facebook handle Trade a Gunner, and it carries through to the early morning hours of Halloween.
The conversation starts with Deontay Green reaching out innocently, just simply reaching out, saying hello. Pretty quickly after that individual learned of Deontay Green's sexual preference, had learned that the reason he reached out to him was in a flirtatious manner or a romantic nature, he was appalled. He was insulted.
Trey's responses become aggressive at times.
He even told him if he keeps coming at him, he's going to beat him up.
Deontay respected his decision, and the conversation dropped. But not for long.
Later on, that same individual had a change of heart.
And at some point in their communication, they were flirting back and forth.
Deontay felt like the guy was actually interested, but may be scared or have some fear about meeting up with him.
Deontay would respond that this is something that we can keep between us.
Sometimes gay men or bisexual men have this battle internally with being open and being accepting of who they are versus the homophobia that is around them. So if you could imagine, being able to link or meet up with someone who is saying they're not gay, but they're expressing some interest, it can be validating or give a sense of acceptance to an openly gay or bisexual person.
In the very last message, Deontay gave Trey DeGunna his phone number, and then the messages stopped.
Detectives are eager to discover Trey DeGunna's real name so they can track him down for an interview.
If Trey DeGunna had actually texted Deontay, the officers could trace the number back to the real person.
When detectives obtain Deontay's phone records, they discover one particular number was in contact with Deontay 80 times the night he was killed.
They thought this must be Trey DeGunna.
They are able to trace the number to an individual by the name of Antonio Golston.
But Antonio Golston looks nothing like the man Deontay had been messaging with on Facebook.
He appeared to have a total different Facebook page that had no contact with Deontay.
Regardless, detectives want to speak with Antonio Golston ASAP.
Detectives tracked him down and brought him into the station for questioning.
I'll just show you this picture. You know anything about this guy at all?
No, sir.
They asked him, how did he know the name Deontay Green? But he said the name doesn't ring a bell.
Well, there's a reason we've ended up here today, okay?
Mm-hmm.
You're saying you've never talked with him before over the phone?
No, sir.
Or via text?
No, sir.
At this point, detectives decide to turn up the heat.
We're working a death investigation, all right?
Yes, sir.
This guy that you're looking at, we found him dead.
Detectives confront him with the phone records, and they show that they have proof that he called him the night that Deontay died.
What we need you to do is just explain to us why your number is in his phone.
They ask him, why? Why are you the last person to talk with Deontay Green before he was murdered?
I think you're nervous. I think you're scared. But we need to get over that. We need to move forward, okay?
All I can say is just try to find my cousin Trey. And that's it.
When Antonio says the name Trey, detectives' ears perk up.
Was he the Trey DeGunna they've been looking for?
You gotta find him.
In the fall of 2014, Kansas City detectives finally have a suspect in custody for the murder of 22-year-old Deontay Green.
Antonio Golston's phone number communicated with Deontay's roughly 80 times on the night of his murder.
But Antonio denies any involvement in Deontay's death.
I never talked to the guy or texted the guy in my life.
Investigators were confident they caught Antonio in a lie, but he claimed he had a perfect explanation for all of this.
Antonio Golston's response is, my cousin had my phone.
According to Antonio, his cousin Trey Shaw had asked to borrow his phone on the 30th.
Because his phone had been stolen. He gave his cousin his phone.
I don't know whatever Trey did, I didn't come from there that night. Like, pretty much, I was still at home.
And so Antonio Golston tells the officers that it is his cousin, Trey, who was conversating with Deontay Green before Deontay Green was murdered.
So Trey's texting him?
Yes.
Okay. And what's he look like?
Light skin, dreads.
They showed him photographs of Trey DeGunna on Facebook, and he confirmed that that was his cousin.
All I can say is just try to find my cousin Trey. And that's it.
With Antonio's help, investigators quickly locate 18-year-old Trayvon Shaw.
They are able to bring him in for an interview. Trayvon denies any knowledge of ever knowing Deontay, ever being with Deontay, or with anything of that nature.
That's when detectives confront him with the Facebook messages.
Man, no, those have to be fake.
He swears he's straight and would never agree to go out with a man.
Come on, Trey.
Look, man, that's not me. I don't know what to tell you.
Detectives aren't buying any of this.
As frustrating as it was, detectives did not have enough evidence to arrest Trayvon.
So they're forced to release him for the time being.
Before they let him go, though, they gathered his fingerprints.
As days pass, without any new developments in the case, Deontay's mother never gives up hope that her son's killer will be brought to justice.
I mean, day in and day out, I'm calling the detectives that had Deontay's case. I'm going to get answers. Deontay Green case would not go cold. I was hell bent on not giving up, and I just was adamant in saying this case would not go just thrown on the desk. This case will be solved.
And the pressure Koshel keeps on detectives is not in vain.
Based on the information they learned from Deontay's best friend, Greg, detectives believe that Deontay drove his killers to a gas station on the night of his murder.
Officers start scanning the area for gas stations, and they come across I believe it's a Shell gas station.
So they go to the Shell gas station and they look through that surveillance video, and what they find is the break in the case.
That's it.
They see the gold Dodge Stratus that Deontay was driving pull up to the Shell gas station.
In the passenger seat is a young man with locks.
A young man that looks just like 18-year-old Trayvon Shaw.
The individual gets out of the front passenger seat and attempts to withdraw money out of an ATM before going back out to the vehicle, getting in, and the vehicle drives off.
They have a suspect matching Trayvon Shaw's description exiting the Dodge Stratus at the Shell gas station right before the homicide.
And fingerprint results provide another smoking gun.
Investigators were able to lift some fingerprints from Deontay's vehicle.
When it comes back, the fingerprint on the passenger compartment of the Dodge Stratus that Deontay Green was murdered in matches Trayvon Shaw.
At this point, investigators are prepared to take down Trayvon Shaw for the murder of Deontay Green.
With guns drawn, detectives bang on the door demanding that Trayvon come out with his hands up.
Police, open up! Don't make this harder than it has to be, Trey.
But Trayvon has no plans to go in willingly this time.
Officers made entry. Trayvon Shaw fled upstairs.
He was going to do whatever he needed to evade arrest.
On November 6, 2014, Kansas City investigators are in the process of arresting 18-year-old Trayvon Shaw, their number one suspect, in the murder of Deontay Green.
Don't make this harder than it has to be, Trey.
But Trayvon is not going down easy.
At that time, officers made entry.
Police!
Trayvon Shaw fled upstairs and barricaded himself in an upstairs bedroom. They went inside. They found Trayvon Shaw hiding in the closet.
Put your hands up! Turn around.
They arrested him without incident.
Trayvon Shaw, you're under arrest for the murder of Deontay Green.
Back in the interrogation room, detectives waste no time confronting Trey with the new evidence they've collected.
What do you have to say about this?
Man, that's not me.
The footage that the man in the car is him.
However, Trayvon is quickly caught in his lie.
The same shoes he was wearing the night of the homicide on the surveillance video is the same shoes he was wearing during his interview at the police station.
As if that wasn't enough, they then tell him his fingerprints are a match to the ones found inside Deontay's car.
And they show him the fingerprint that was lifted off of the passenger compartment. And Trayvon Shaw can't lie anymore.
He said he didn't want to be a snitch, but he couldn't take the heat any longer.
It was all my cousin Antonio's idea.
According to Trayvon, he was hanging out at Antonio's place when Deontay messaged him on social media.
They ran in similar circles and had seen each other around town before. But this was the first time they had really spoken.
You gonna do it? No, man. I think you should do it. No.
Trey assured the detectives that he was straight and preferred women.
But Trey says his cousin encouraged him to play the part.
And Antonio encouraged him to pretend that he was actually interested in meeting up for a date.
Nah, check it out. Look, we're all the we, right?
Yeah.
And we both need money, right?
Well, that is true.
Yeah. So this is our chance.
Antonio Golston told him he was going to rob Deontay Green.
And Trey would be the bait.
You in?
Yeah. Yeah, let's do it.
That's when Trey the Gunner started to respond again to Deontay and said they could meet up if he could get him some weed.
Text.
The duo used Antonio's phone to text back and forth with Deontay before meeting up with him.
When Deontay thought he was texting with Trayvon, he was actually texting with Antonio.
The duo met up with Deontay around midnight on the 31st, and Trayvon says he could tell Deontay was caught off guard by Antonio.
When they met up, it was a surprise because there was another guy. Where did he come from? Who is he? Why is he here?
Regardless, Deontay played it cool and agreed to help them obtain the marijuana they wanted.
Deontay drove them to the gas station to get cash.
Trey pretended to get the money for the weed out of the ATM, when in reality, his account was empty, and they planned on stealing the funds from Deontay.
Trayvon says Deontay drove them to the South Side neighborhood where he believed they'd be purchasing the marijuana. And that's when all hell broke loose.
Give me your wallet.
Wait, what?
Give me your wallet.
Man, get the hell out of my car.
His story is that Golston pulled out the firearm and there was a struggle. And then all he knows is the gun went off.
Oh, damn.
And now you've got a dead body and two people in the vehicle and a robbery gone wrong.
Trayvon explains they couldn't find Deontay's wallet in the panic, so all they left with was his phone.
They took the phone since it was just lying there.
It happened so fast. I didn't know what to do. Antonio took off, so I followed him.
Was Antonio really the mastermind all along? Or was Trayvon just trying to cover for himself?
When analyzing the data from Antonio Golston's cell phone, they come across photographs of Antonio holding firearms. They also find text messages in which Antonio is telling another individual that he recently got a 400 korban.
With this new evidence in tow, detectives circle back around to Antonio.
They started by confronting him with Trey's statement.
We only have one side of the story right now. And that story paints a gruesome picture. Mm-hmm. I mean, it sounds like a Lifetime movie.
Mm-hmm. They give him one final opportunity to give his version of the events. He again denies any knowledge of what happened to Deontay Green.
So detectives change course.
You mess with guns at all? You ever do like any Facebook photos with guns or anything like that? No, sir. You have any guns that you keep at your house for safety?
No.
Protection? Carry guns with you? What about?
I don't do guns, period.
But detectives are prepared to catch Antonio in his lie.
We have a search warrant for the phone.
Okay.
Detectives are going through it.
Okay.
There's pictures of you taking selfies. There's pictures of you with holding guns on that phone.
Detectives just tell him point blank, Antonio, you're full of... And they all have a good laugh about it. It's like a child being caught. There's nothing for him to do but laugh at how unbelievable his own story is.
You were there.
I really wasn't there. But now I wasn't. I'm done talking. Take him to the cell.
I mean, that's it. That's how you want to leave it.
Like that. Because, like, y'all ain't gonna believe me anyways. Just take him to the cell.
Investigators now have enough evidence to charge both Antonio Golston and Trayvon Shaw with second-degree murder. But Deontay's family still has a tough road ahead of them.
Well, Trayvon Shaw, he wasn't the gunman. So it was like, do we really want to go to trial against him, or would you like to take a plea deal? My response, absolutely not.
Now we have to go to trial. Now we have to look these people in the eye that killed Deontay and took him from us.
His killers or killer will be brought to justice. This is the last thing I did.
In June 2015, investigators in Kansas City have finally charged 21-year-old Antonio Golston and 18-year-old Trayvon Shaw for the death of Deontay Green.
It felt so good to know that now we have the guys, but the hardest part was now we have to go to trial. Now we have to look these people in the eye that killed Deontay and took him from us.
Between the phone records and Trayvon's statement, prosecutors feel certain a jury will convict Antonio. But they aren't as confident about securing a conviction against Trayvon.
Was kind of like a 50-50, they said. It was a lot of circumstantial evidence. They didn't have the murder weapon, and he wasn't the trigger man.
But Cochelle is determined to see both men face justice for her son's death.
The prosecutors asked, would you like to take a plea deal? My response, absolutely not. No, I'm going to trust in God, and I'm going to go, let's do the trial. His killers will be brought to justice. This is the last thing I did.
In May of 2016, Trayvon Shaw's trial begins. Prosecutors explain why Trayvon was an integral part of what happened to Deontay, even though he didn't pull the trigger.
Deontay Green had reached out to Trayvon Shaw innocently, hoping for some type of connection. Trayvon Shaw and Antonio Goldston learned that pretty quickly, and they knew they could exploit that.
You win?
Yeah.
Deontay Green was there for Trayvon Shaw. He wasn't there for Antonio Goldston.
However, when the jury retires to deliberate, they decide to show Trayvon mercy.
Instead of second-degree murder, he was found guilty of involuntary manslaughter and sentenced to only 17 years in prison.
The jury agreed that Trayvon Shaw took part, but I think the jury believed, hey, he knew this was a robbery, but he didn't think it was going to be a murder.
It's a disappointing verdict for Deontay's loved ones.
I get that he wasn't the trigger man, but he's the sole purpose and reason why we're here. It was because of him.
At Antonio Golston's trial in the winter of 2016, he continues to maintain his original story, that he wasn't even there that night.
His story was he wasn't even in the car the night that my son was killed. He was so nonchalant. It was ridiculous.
However, just like Trayvon's case, the jury at Antonio's trial forgoes second-degree murder charges.
Antonio Golston, at the end of his trial, was convicted of 1 count of voluntary manslaughter, 2 counts of armed criminal action, and 1 count of robbery in the first degree.
Antonio is sentenced to just 25 years behind bars.
25 years still isn't enough. When he get out, he'll still have a life. His mother can still call him. He can still call his mother. They can still visit. I can't talk to my son. I have to remember our last conversation of saying, I love you, be good, I'll see you later. Or I have to go to a grave site to visit my son or look at pictures to remember him.
When both of the guys were found guilty, it made me feel a little bit relieved, but it didn't bring him back. So, I mean, it was hard. It's still hard.
Today, Deontay's legacy continues to live on through his twin daughters, Diana and Tiana.
When Deontay passed away, Diana and Tiana were 7 years old.
We just talk, just ramble about him sometimes. We had memories. Just hearing his voice or just seeing him, that's one thing I really do miss about my father. Everything we do is for him. We will follow into his footsteps, make sure that everyone remembers who my father was. He's never forgotten.
Deontay wanted everybody to be comfortable with who you were. If I could walk away and say anything about Deontay Green, was one word: love. Love, love, love. Love.
Introduction and psychological preface. The human heart is a complex vessel capable of profound devotion, selflessness, and the quiet pursuit of shared happiness. Yet, when the delicate architecture of affection is compromised by possessiveness, insecurity, or a desperate need for control, the resulting transformation can be as swift as it is devastating. In the realm of criminal psychology, we frequently observe that the most tragic acts of violence do not emerge from cold, calculated malice alone, but from the slow, unchecked unraveling of human relationships. When love is replaced by a sense of ownership, the partner is no longer seen as an independent being with their own agency, but as an extension of the self or a possession to be guarded at all costs. This psychological distortion often manifests in three distinct patterns of tragic obsession. First, there is the desperate holding on to a crumbling connection where the prospect of rejection triggers a catastrophic loss of identity and control. Second, there is the possessive dominance that seeks to smother a partner's growing independence, viewing their personal growth as an existential threat. Third, there is the displaced obsession of the onlooker whose repressed desires and secret infatuations turn outward in a destructive wave of jealousy against those who enjoy the intimacy they themselves are denied. By examining the investigations that followed these tragic disruptions, we gain a deeper understanding of the meticulous, quiet determination of the justice system. The detectives, forensic scientists, and community advocates who piece together these fractured narratives do not merely seek to solve cases. They work to restore order to communities shaken by violence, to honor the memories of the lives cut short, and to find the truth hidden beneath layers of deception and denial. Through a detailed exploration of three distinct cases, we observe how the steady light of investigative focus eventually pierces the darkness of denial, bringing accountability to those who succumb to their worst impulses and offering a solemn reflection on the true meaning of devotion and human dignity. Chapter 1: The Volatile Compass of Little Elm. In the quiet, close-knit community of Little Elm, Texas, the rhythms of daily life were predictable and calm. It was a place where neighbors knew one another, where front lawns were neatly kept, and where the local police department represented a reassuring, protective presence. It was within this tranquil setting that a relationship began, carrying all the outward appearances of a classic, heartwarming romance. Denise Miller was a woman who had known both the joys of family life and the quiet struggles of starting over. Growing up in Kansas City, Missouri, she had been a popular, bubbly, and personable young lady, highly regarded by her peers for her warm and caring nature. At the age of 22, she had married her college sweetheart, embarking on a journey of motherhood with the births of her daughter, Whitney, in 1986, and her son, Walter, 2 years later. Her children were the center of her world, and she poured her energy into providing them with a stable and loving environment. However, as can happen in the delicate course of human affairs, the marriage eventually faltered, culminating in a divorce in 1995. Seeking a clean slate and a fresh start far away from the painful reminders of the past, Denise packed up her belongings and moved her children to the growing suburb of Little Elm, Texas. She was 36 years old, determined, and highly capable. She secured a successful position with a local beverage distributor, managed her finances with great prudence, and eventually built a beautiful, spacious home for her family. To any observer, her life was a testament to resilience and hard work. Her home was filled with framed family photographs, and her children were thriving. Yet, Denise still hoped to find a trustworthy partner with whom she could share her success. That hope seemed to materialize in 2003 when a knock sounded at her front door. Standing on her porch was a tall, imposing figure in uniform. Officer Wayne Irby of the Little Elm Police Department. He was 37 years old, a 6-year veteran of the force, and a man who took immense pride in his profession. In the parlance of law enforcement, Wayne was someone who bled blue. He was active on his beat, friendly, and possessed an easy charm that made people feel instantly secure. On that particular afternoon, he had noticed Denise's garage door was left open and, concerned about a recent spate of neighborhood thefts, had stopped by to advise her to close it. He handed her his business card, offering his assistance should she ever need anything. The brief encounter left a lasting impression. It was not long before Officer Irby returned to Denise's home, this time off duty, to express that he had been unable to stop thinking about her. He asked her out for dinner and a movie, and the spark between them was immediate. Within a short time, they became an exclusive couple. Wayne, a divorced father himself, integrated seamlessly into the lives of Denise's children. They treated him with the respect and affection of a father figure, and for a season, they resembled a happy, unified family. Yet, beneath the polished surface of their domestic life, a persistent undercurrent of insecurity began to erode their foundation. Wayne was naturally gregarious and popular within the community, often exchanging friendly banter with the residents on his beat. To a secure partner, this might have been viewed as a professional asset. To Denise, whose past experiences may have left lingering vulnerabilities. It was a source of mounting suspicion. She began to fear that Wayne's friendly demeanor with other women was a sign of infidelity. When she confronted him, Wayne denied the allegations with great vehemence, insisting that his interactions were entirely innocent. But the seed of doubt, once planted, is difficult to eradicate. It began to cloud Denise's perception, transforming healthy concern into a restrictive, smothering watchfulness. By the spring of 2004, the couple attempted to put these trust issues behind them, eventually taking the significant step of purchasing a home together. The shared roof, however, did not soothe the underlying tension. Instead, it amplified it. The domestic sphere became a pressure cooker of accusations and emotional distress. Recognizing that the relationship was trapped in a destructive cycle, Wayne made the difficult decision to separate, moving into a modest rental home across town. The separation was marked by tears, arguments, and profound grief. Yet, when Denise unexpectedly lost her employment in November of that year, Wayne's protective instincts resurfaced. Not wishing to see Denise and her children face financial ruin or lose their home, he agreed to reconcile and attempt to work through their differences once more. It was a fragile peace, and it would not survive the winter. On the morning of December 10th, 2004, the fragile architecture of their reconciled life collapsed. At 6 o'clock in the morning, the officers of the Little Elm Police Department gathered for their daily morning briefing. One seat remained empty. Officer Wayne Irby, a man known for his punctuality and unwavering dedication, was absent. Telephone calls to his personal number went unanswered. As the hours passed without word, the concern among his colleagues deepened into a sense of foreboding. It was entirely uncharacteristic of Wayne to miss a shift without notification. By midday, Police Chief Waylon Rhodes dispatched officers to conduct a welfare check at the residence Wayne shared with Denise. The house was quiet, the driveway empty of vehicles, and the doors firmly locked. Seeking answers, officers located Denise's children, Walter and Whitney, who revealed they had not seen their mother or Wayne in nearly 24 hours. More troubling still was Whitney's recollection of a midnight telephone call from her mother the previous evening. Denise had uncharacteristically told her daughter she was running errands, expressed her deep love for her, and instructed the children to prepare themselves for school the following morning. For a mother so deeply involved in her children's lives, such a call was highly irregular and alarming. As the police department intensified its search for their missing colleague, Officer Jerry Walker, Wayne's close partner on the force, decided to investigate the rental home Wayne had vacated during their brief separation. Obtaining a key from the landlord, Walker and Officer James cautiously entered the quiet house. The interior was still. In the kitchen, they discovered Wayne's fanny pack and his cellular phone, items he rarely, if ever, left behind. The officers pressed further down the hallway. Turning a corner, Officer Wynn suddenly stopped. Catching his breath in a moment of sheer shock, he instructed Walker to stay back, but the gravity of the situation drew both men forward. There, lying on the floor, was Officer Wayne Irby. He had suffered a single, fatal gunshot wound to the back of his head. There were no signs of a struggle, no indications of forced entry, and no evidence of defensive maneuvers. The position of the wound suggested he had been shot from behind, completely unaware of the impending threat. The search for a missing officer had transformed into a homicide investigation. But the question remained, where was Denise Miller? As investigators from the Denton County Sheriff's Office and the Texas Rangers began the meticulous process of documenting the crime scene, they searched the residence Denise and Wayne shared. In the master bedroom, they discovered a handwritten note from Denise. The contents were rambling and desperate, indicative of an individual contemplating ending her own life. Furthermore, a search of Wayne's duty gear revealed that his uniform was hanging in the closet, but his service weapon, a .40 caliber pistol, was missing from its holster. The discovery of the note and the missing weapon led to a dual hypothesis. Either Denise had committed a tragic act of violence against Wayne and subsequently fled to take her own life, or she was a secondary victim of an unknown assailant. An all-points bulletin was broadcast across the region, urging law enforcement to locate Denise and her vehicle with the explicit warning that she might be armed and highly distressed. As detectives delved deeper into the couple's history, they uncovered a documented pattern of volatility. In December of 2003, Denise had filed a domestic violence complaint against Wayne following an altercation at his rental home. She had arrived unannounced, observed another woman's belongings through the window, and demanded entry. The ensuing confrontation had descended into physical violence, leaving Wayne with noticeable facial injuries and scratches. Although Denise later withdrew the complaint, admitting she had initiated the physical conflict in a fit of rage, the incident painted a clear picture of her capacity for volatile, reactive behavior when confronted with perceived betrayal. The investigation also revealed that on the day before his death, Wayne had confided in a friend that he had reached his limit. He intended to end the relationship permanently and move out of the shared residence. This decision, it appeared, was the catalyst for the final, tragic encounter. The physical evidence soon began to align with this theory. On the kitchen island of Wayne's rental home, detectives discovered a second handwritten note from Denise. It was a direct, albeit tragic, confession. She apologized for what she had done, stated she had taken both of their lives, and requested that their mothers be contacted. At 4 o'clock in the morning on December 11th, 2004, the search reached its grim conclusion. The night manager of a hotel in Gainesville, Texas, received a slurred, highly distressed telephone call from a guest room. Upon attempting to investigate, the manager found the door secured by a deadbolt, necessitating the assistance of a maintenance worker to force entry. Inside the darkened room, they made a shocking discovery.
Lying on the floor in
a fetal position was Denise Miller. She was alone, severely injured, and bleeding from a gunshot wound to her head, just above her eye. Lying beside her was a .25 caliber handgun. The hotel room was in complete disarray, littered with empty alcohol containers and over-the-counter sleeping medication. Near her belongings, investigators located Wayne's missing .40 caliber service weapon. It had jammed with a bullet loaded backward into the chamber, rendering it inoperable. It appeared that when her initial attempt to use Wayne's service weapon failed, Denise had turned to the smaller .25 caliber pistol. Denise was rushed to a regional trauma center in critical condition. Against immense medical odds, she survived the self-inflicted wound, but the trauma too. Her brain left her with severe cognitive and physical deficits, including partial paralysis, blindness in one eye, and a profound localized amnesia.
When
questioned by Texas Ranger Tracy Murphy at her bedside, Denise appeared entirely
disoriented.
She could recall past events and her presence at Wayne's house, but when informed of Wayne's death and her own injuries, she expressed genuine shock and denial, insisting that such events had not occurred. To the colleagues of the fallen officer, this apparent memory loss was a source of deep frustration. Yet, the wheel of justice continued to turn. Ballistics testing confirmed that the .25 caliber bullet recovered during Wayne's autopsy had been fired from the same handgun found beside Denise in the hotel room, a weapon later traced to her stepfather. In January of 2005, Denise Miller was formally charged with first-degree murder. Following 18 months of intensive medical rehabilitation and physical therapy, she was deemed legally competent to stand trial. On July 10, 2006, the trial commenced at the Denton County Courthouse. Denise appeared in the courtroom in a wheelchair, frail, weakened, and quiet. Her defense counsel argued that the shooting had been a tragic, accidental discharge, pointing to a third, more detailed note found in the hotel room in which Denise claimed she had not meant to hurt Wayne, had panicked, and fled. The prosecution, however, presented a far more deliberate narrative. They introduced the forensic analysis of the .25 caliber handgun, which demonstrated that the weapon's trigger required 4.5 to 5 pounds of pressure to discharge, entirely contradicting the theory of an accidental, involuntary hair trigger event. Furthermore, they pointed to her actions following the shooting. Rather than summoning medical assistance for the man she claimed to love, she had gathered her belongings, penned confession notes, taken his service weapon, and fled the scene to hide in a distant hotel. The trial was not an exercise in cheap sensationalism, but a somber examination of the consequences of unchecked obsession. After less than an hour of deliberation, the jury returned a verdict of guilty. At her sentencing hearing, the jury took into account her severe, permanent physical disabilities, sparing her the maximum penalty of death, and instead sentenced her to 62 years in prison. For the family of Wayne Irby and the community of Little Elm, there was no sense of triumph in the verdict, only a profound, heavy quiet. A dedicated officers. Life had been cut short, and a family had been dismantled, leaving only the sobering reminder of the destruction that occurs when love is eclipsed by the dark shadow of possessive control. Chapter 2: The Incineration of Promise in Houston. In the sprawling metropolis of Houston, Texas, the pursuit of higher education is often viewed as the ultimate gateway to a better life, particularly for young people raised in the city's more challenging neighborhoods. Tanisha Stewart was a young woman who personified this hopeful journey. Raised in a bustling household as one of 6 children, she had experienced the early loss of her father, yet she possessed a bright, shining spirit that refused to be dampened by her circumstances. Tanisha was exceptionally dedicated to her studies, earning high marks and the deep admiration of her family. Blessed with an infectious smile, natural beauty, and a quiet confidence, she had a bright future ahead of her. In May of 2005, while employed at a local pizza restaurant, the 17-year-old met Timothy Shepard, a coworker who was 25 years old. Tim was handsome, helpful, and persistent in his attentions. Despite the 8-year age gap, Tanisha was drawn to his mature demeanor, and their relationship progressed rapidly. To demonstrate his commitment, Timothy made a concerted effort to ingratiate himself with Tanisha's family. He was a frequent presence at her mother's home, offering his assistance with domestic chores, repairing television sets, and servicing computers. He was embraced as a brother and a son, a stable figure in their lives. However, the dynamic began to shift when Tanisha achieved a major milestone. She was awarded a scholarship to Texas A&M University, located nearly 2 hours away in College Station. For Tanisha, the university campus opened up a world of new ideas, diverse social circles, and personal independence. For Timothy, this transition was viewed not as a triumph to be celebrated, but as a direct threat to his influence and control. During her first semester, the strain on their relationship became apparent, culminating in Timothy abruptly ending the romance to pursue a former girlfriend. Yet, realizing his error, he soon traveled to College Station to surprise Tanisha, pleading for a reconciliation. They resumed dating, but the balance of power had permanently altered. Tanisha was no longer the impressionable teenager he had met in the pizza shop. She was an independent college co-ed, exploring her own path and forming new friendships. When Tanisha returned to Houston for her spring break in March of 2007, she sought to balance her time between her family, her friends, and Timothy. She had plans to attend a concert with her girlfriends, an event she looked forward to with great anticipation. However, her sister, Gayla Taylor, harbored a strange, lingering anxiety, even recounting a disturbing nightmare in which Tanisha had vanished. Tanisha had gently laughed off her sister's fears, promising she would be safe. On Sunday, March 18th, 2007, that safety was revealed to be an illusion. Gayla received a frantic telephone call from her mother, who reported that Tanisha had failed to return home, had missed the concert, and was not answering her cellular phone. This was entirely out of character for Tanisha, who maintained regular communication with her family. As the hours stretched into days, the family's panic grew. They contacted local hospitals and law enforcement, officially filing a missing persons report on Monday, March 19th. Investigators immediately sought out the individuals who had last seen Tanisha, focusing their attention on Timothy Shepard. Timothy appeared cooperative, voluntarily coming to the police station for
questioning.
He explained that he had picked Tanisha up in the early morning hours of Thursday, March 15th. According to his account, while they were driving to his apartment, Tanisha received a telephone call from a male college friend named Mark Marks. This call had sparked an argument, which resumed after they woke up later that morning. Timothy claimed he confronted Tanisha about the nature of her relationship with Mark, prompting her to grow angry, storm out of his apartment on foot, and disappear. Timothy maintained this narrative through nearly 20 hours of questioning, never wavering in his delivery. He voluntarily provided detectives with written consent to search his apartment, finding no obvious signs of a struggle or foul play. Investigators returned his keys and turned their attention to Mark Marks. Mark was a 19-year-old student who cooperated fully with law enforcement. He admitted he was romantically interested in Tanisha and that they had been dating secretly, as Tanisha was hesitant to hurt Timothy's feelings but was preparing to end her relationship with him permanently. Mark's alibi, however, was ironclad. He had been attending a social gathering on South Padre Island at the time of Tanisha's disappearance, a claim verified by multiple witnesses and travel records. With Mark eliminated as a suspect, detectives faced the terrifying possibility that Tanisha had been abducted by a stranger after walking away from Timothy's apartment complex, which was bordered by a dense, dark tract of woodland. As search parties composed of family members, friends, and community volunteers combed the area, investigators received a series of highly unusual reports from the residents of Timothy's apartment complex. Neighbors recalled that on the Friday following Tanisha's disappearance, Timothy had engaged in an extraordinary, continuous outdoor cooking session. He had operated 2 large grills on his patio, producing such a massive, thick volume of smoke that concerned neighbors had dialed 911, fearing a structural fire. When firefighters and police officers arrived to address the smoke, Timothy calmly explained he was preparing a large quantity of meat for an upcoming church picnic, estimated to serve between 150 and 200
people.
Firefighters who inspected the interior of his apartment reported seeing what appeared to be uncooked meat soaking in a bathtub filled with water. Furthermore, another resident reported a highly disturbing observation. She had witnessed Timothy pouring a massive quantity of chemical bleach onto his outdoor patio, scrubbed with such intensity that the fumes burned her eyes. These odd domestic activities, when viewed in isolation, did not constitute proof of a crime. But when detectives consulted Tanisha's family once more, they learned of a dark history of domestic control. Gayla revealed that Timothy had become increasingly possessive, stalking Tanisha on campus when she failed to answer his calls, sending threatening text messages, and on one occasion, physically assaulting her by strangulation when she attempted to leave. Recognizing that the standard investigative avenues were yielding little physical evidence, Tanisha's family reached out to Quannell X, a well-known community activist with a reputation for facilitating peaceful surrenders and negotiating with individuals wary of law enforcement. Ironically, Timothy's own family had also contacted Quannell, seeking his protection for Timothy against what they perceived as unfair police scrutiny. Quannell X arranged a private, face-to-face meeting with Timothy at his apartment. Sensing Timothy's extreme distress, Quannell suggested they speak in the privacy of the bathroom, away from any potential surveillance. Inside the quiet room, Quannell looked Timothy in the eye, asking him directly if he had played a role in Tanisha's disappearance. In a sudden, emotional shift, the young man's defense collapsed. Timothy confessed that when Tanisha had refused to answer his questions about Marks and attempted to walk out of his life, he had flown into a violent, jealous rage and strangled her to death. He then claimed he had disposed of her body in a commercial dumpster at the rear of his apartment complex. Quannell immediately contacted investigator Sidney Miller. Accompanied by detectives, they escorted a distraught Timothy to the designated dumpster. But when they arrived, their hopes of recovering Tanisha's remains were dashed. The dumpster had been recently emptied by a municipal waste management truck, its contents transferred to a massive regional landfill. A search of the landfill was deemed logistically impossible, estimated to cost upwards of $500,000 with a near-zero probability of success. In a display of profound dignity, Tanisha's mother requested that the county not exhaust its resources on a futile search, choosing instead to focus on securing justice. Following his arrest, Timothy invoked his right to counsel and refused further interviews. Without a body, prosecutors knew that securing a conviction would be an immense challenge. They returned to Timothy's apartment with a highly specialized crime scene unit, determined to find microscopic evidence. Their meticulous efforts yielded horrifying results. Inside the kitchen garbage disposal, forensic analysts recovered tiny bone fragments and a piece of enamel, later confirmed by DNA analysis to match Tanisha's unique genetic profile. Outside, near the patio where the intensive grilling had occurred, investigators found additional charred bone fragments. The chilling truth was now inescapable. Timothy Shepard had not merely killed Tanisha, he had used his smoker and grills to incinerate her remains, attempting to erase every physical trace of her existence. On September 29th, 2008, the trial of the state of Texas versus Timothy Shepard commenced. Prosecutors presented a detailed, harrowing reconstruction of the crime, asserting that Timothy's motive was rooted in a fragile, possessive ego that chose destruction over the loss of control. The defense argued that the prosecution's case was built on circumstantial evidence and lacked a body to prove a homicide had occurred. However, the forensic recovery of Tanisha's tooth enamel in the garbage disposal was an unassailable piece of evidence. Quan Nell X took the stand, delivering riveting testimony regarding Timothy's detailed confession. The final, devastating blow to the defense came from Timothy's own cousin, Nicholas Shepard, who testified that Timothy had previously made chilling remarks, stating that if Tanisha ever attempted to leave him, he would cut her up and boil her. In a desperate, final effort during the sentencing phase, Timothy took the witness stand, attempting to argue that Tanisha had been the aggressor, brandishing a knife during their argument, and that he had merely acted in self-defense, blacking out during the struggle. But when pressed by the prosecution regarding his actions after her death, he admitted to dismembering her and placing her in a smoker. The jury rejected his claim of self-defense, finding him guilty of first-degree murder and sentencing him to 99 years in prison, the maximum penalty allowed. Tanisha Stewart's family was left to mourn a young woman of limitless potential, whose life was snuffed out by a partner who could not endure her independence. The investigation, marked by the collaboration of dedicated detectives, a relentless crime scene unit, and a community activist, ensured that her killer would spend the remainder of his life behind bars, a solemn victory of truth over a truly unthinkable act of cruelty. Chapter 3: The Pastor's Obsession in North Carolina. The city of Raleigh, North Carolina, with its historic oak trees and prestigious educational institutions, is home to a diverse community of scholars, professionals, and families. It was here on a cold, winter morning on January 30th, 2008, that the tranquility of the morning commute was shattered. At approximately 7:30 in the morning, drivers traveling west on Interstate 540 noticed a dark shape lying in the grass along the shoulder of the highway. Upon closer inspection by emergency medical technicians and local sheriff's deputies, it was revealed to be the body of a young woman. The initial assumption of a pedestrian accident was immediately dispelled by the horrific nature of her injuries. She had been subjected to a brutal, frenzied assault, suffering upwards of 40 stab wounds concentrated around her face, neck, and torso. Her carotid artery and jugular vein had been severed, and her vocal cords were cut. There were no signs of robbery. Her jewelry remained intact. A half-mile down the interstate, deputies located an abandoned white passenger vehicle, parked with its hazard lights flashing. The interior showed signs of a violent struggle, with a damaged center console and blood spattered on the driver's side door. Darren Curtis, a young man on his way to work, drove past the act of crime scene spotting a vehicle matching his wife's car on the shoulder of the highway. He returned to the scene in a state of panic. Investigators soon confirmed his worst fears. The victim was his 21-year-old wife, Latrice Curtis. Latrice was a vibrant, ambitious business administration student at North Carolina Central University in Durham. She had grown up as the adored, popular, only daughter in a large family known for her warm, outgoing personality and her academic drive. She had married Darren, an honorable accounting student and former National Guard soldier, just 9 months prior. Their future had seemed exceptionally bright. As detectives began their investigation, they questioned Darren, searching for any signs of marital discord. Darren explained that Latrice had called him around 10 o'clock the previous evening, stating she was running late from her classes and planned to secure some food before returning home. Darren had fallen asleep, assuming she had decided to stay at her parents' house. He had attempted to call her in the morning, but the calls went straight to voicemail. An examination of Darren's physical appearance revealed no scratches, cuts, or bruises consistent with a struggle. A search of their shared apartment and his personal vehicle yielded no evidence. He was cleared of involvement, but the mystery of Latrice's death deepened. An autopsy of Latrice's body revealed a highly significant detail. She had engaged in sexual intercourse shortly before her death, evidenced by a condom found inside her body. Crucially, there were no physical injuries to her genital area indicative of a sexual assault, suggesting the encounter had been consensual. Detectives subpoenaed the couple's cellular phone records. The logs revealed a flurry of calls exchanged between Latrice and an unfamiliar phone number in the hours leading up to her death, concluding around midnight. The number was registered to Stephen Randolph, a popular, handsome athlete on the university's basketball team, who harbored ambitions of playing in the National Association of Basketball. 2 days after the homicide, Stephen Randolph arrived at the Wake County Sheriff's Office, accompanied by his housemate, a well-known local pastor and motivational speaker named Robert Reeves. Stephen was escorted into an interrogation room where he initially claimed his relationship with Latrice was strictly academic. However, when confronted with the forensic findings of the autopsy, Stephen admitted to a passionate, secret affair. He revealed that Latrice had visited his basement apartment on the night of January 29th, where they had engaged in a sexual encounter. During the encounter, the condom had become lodged, and despite their efforts, they could not retrieve it. Latrice had departed his residence around 10 o'clock in the evening, intending to address the issue at her own home. Stephen claimed that after she left, he drove to the apartment of his primary girlfriend, Velma Newton, where he stayed until approximately 1 o'clock in the morning. He asserted that during his visit, Latrice had repeatedly called him, expressing intense anxiety about the possibility of an unwanted pregnancy and its implications for her marriage. He denied any involvement in her death. claim passionately supported by his girlfriend, Velma. Seeking to corroborate the timeline, detectives interviewed Pastor Robert Reeves, a 43-year-old charismatic minister affectionately known as the bishop in the local community. Reeves had offered Stephen a cheap room in his basement out of a desire to assist a struggling young athlete. Reeves claimed that on the night of the murder, he had observed Latrice's car parked outside his house before he departed for an evening church service at 8:15. He returned home at 11:30, noting that both Stephen's and Latrice's vehicles were gone. Reeves appeared entirely cooperative, even suggesting that Stephen had confided in him about Latrice's late-night calls. He mentioned that Stephen possessed a collection of knives and swords in his basement room, a detail that immediately caught the attention of investigators, given the nature of Latrice's wounds. However, the investigation took a dramatic turn when detectives spoke with State Trooper Isaac Cooper. Cooper recalled that at approximately 1:30 in the morning on January 30th, 6 hours before Latrice's body was discovered, he had observed two vehicles parked on opposite shoulders of Interstate 540, with their hazard lights flashing. One was a white passenger vehicle, later identified as Latrice's car. The other vehicle was registered to Pastor Robert Reeves. When detectives brought Pastor Reeves in for further questioning, they noticed noticeable, deep scratches and abrasions on his hands and arms. Reeves calmly explained he had sustained the injuries while assisting Stephen in moving a heavy desk. He agreed to provide a DNA sample, confident that his position in the community would shield him from suspicion. Detectives returned to Stephen Randolph, asking him if they had recently moved a desk. Stephen appeared entirely confused, stating no such activity had occurred, and that he was unaware of any injuries to the pastor. He then revealed a far more disturbing aspect of his living arrangement. Stephen disclosed that shortly after he moved in, Pastor Reeves had entered his room and made highly inappropriate, explicit sexual advances, suggesting that Stephen engaged in physical intimacy with him in exchange for free rent. Stephen had firmly rejected the proposition, and although Reeves had apologized, the relationship had remained tense. Subsequent analysis of the pastor's phone records revealed that Reeves had used a blocked number to place numerous harassing, anonymous calls to Stephen's girlfriend, Velma, and to Stephen himself, even vandalizing Stephen's vehicle by slashing its tires. It became glaringly obvious that Pastor Reeves harbored a deep, toxic obsession with his young male tenant. His jealousy was not directed at Stephen, but at the women who enjoyed the physical intimacy Stephen refused to grant him. On the night of January 29th, after witnessing Latrice's car at his home, Reeves' obsession had curdled into a homicidal fury. He had followed Latrice onto the interstate, utilized his position of authority or a pretense of car trouble to induce her to pull over, and unleashed a savage, repressed rage, stabbing her 40 times in a desperate attempt to eliminate her from Stephen's life. The final piece of the puzzle was provided by the state crime lab. The DNA Analysis of a sample recovered from the steering wheel of Latrice's car revealed a genetic profile matching Pastor Robert Reeves. On February 2nd, 2008, the respected minister was formally charged with first-degree murder. His trial in September of 2009 exposed the duality of his life, the public servant of faith contrasted with the obsessive, predatory figure who chose violence over rejection. Despite the defense's attempts to suggest Stephen Randolph was the true killer, pointing to Randolph's DNA found under Latrice's fingernails, a natural consequence of their consensual intimacy earlier that evening, and arguing that the pastor's DNA on the steering wheel was a result of transfer, the jury was unswayed. The mountain of evidence, including his false alibis, his physical injuries, his presence on the interstate, and his history of obsessive harassment, was overwhelming. On October 9, 2009, Robert Reeves was found guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. The tragic loss of Latrice Curtis left a permanent scar on her family and her young husband, a reminder of the devastation wrought by a predator masquerading as a man of faith through the meticulous, objective work of local deputies, state troopers, and forensic scientists. A dangerous individual was permanently removed from society, ensuring that justice, though silent, remained absolute. The study of criminal psychology frequently leads to a sobering realization that some of the most devastating acts of violence do not originate in the minds of hardened career criminals. Instead, they often emerge from the quiet corners of domestic life, born from the slow, toxic decay of intimate relationships. When love curdles into a desire for absolute ownership, and when affection is replaced by a pathological need for control, the transition from romance to tragedy can be swift and irreversible. To understand these transitions, one must look closely at the evidence, the behavior of the perpetrators, and the painstaking efforts of law enforcement. Officers who work to reconstruct the truth from the fragments left behind. This analysis explores three distinct, deeply troubling cases where the illusion of romance shattered, leaving investigators to navigate complex webs of jealousy, denial, and deception. Through the careful examination of forensic evidence, behavioral patterns, and the psychological mechanisms of the perpetrators, we can begin to comprehend how such dark outcomes occur while honoring the memory of the victims and the pursuit of justice. The fog of memory and the price of possessiveness. In the early morning hours of December 11, 2004, the quiet of Gainesville, Texas, was broken by a call of distress. It was just past 4:00 in the morning when a night manager at a local hotel received a deeply concerning call from a guest room. The voice on the other end was slurred, disoriented, and clearly in agony. Sensing immediate danger, the manager walked down the dimly lit hallway to investigate. He knocked repeatedly on the door, calling out to the guest, but received no coherent response. The deadbolt was firmly engaged from the inside. Recognizing the urgency of the situation, the front desk worker contacted the hotel maintenance man, instructing him to break down the door. When the lock finally gave way and the door swung open into the darkened room, the two men made a startling discovery. Lying on the floor in a state of disarray was a woman, crumpled in an almost fetal position, bleeding heavily from a severe wound to her head. The hotel manager immediately contacted the emergency services dispatch, requesting urgent medical assistance. Within minutes, police officers and emergency medical technicians arrived at the scene. The atmosphere was chaotic, as first responders focused on assessing the woman's life-threatening injuries. She was barely conscious, her speech slurred, and she was bleeding from a gunshot wound located just above her eye. Lying on the floor beside her was a .25 caliber handgun. The emergency medical team worked quickly to stabilize her before rushing her to a nearby trauma center, where her survival remained highly uncertain. Back at the hotel room, investigators began the task of processing the scene. They found several bottles of alcohol and over-the-counter sleeping pills, suggesting a high level of distress prior to the shooting. Because the deadbolt had been engaged from the inside and there was no one else present in the room, investigators had to consider two primary possibilities. Either the woman had attempted to take her own life, or an assailant had somehow fled the room before the door was secured. The mystery deepened significantly when authorities identified the injured woman as Denise Miller. Upon running her name through their databases, officers discovered that Denise and her boyfriend, a local police officer named Wayne Irby, had been reported missing just 24 hours earlier from the nearby town of Little Elm, Texas. Officer Irby had failed to report for a scheduled duty shift, raising immediate alarms among his colleagues. The sudden, violent discovery of Denise, combined with the continued absence of Wayne, set off a massive investigation that would eventually expose a tragic story of jealousy and obsession. To understand how Denise and Wayne arrived at this fateful crossroad, investigators began to reconstruct their history. Denise Wall had grown up in Kansas City, Missouri, where she was widely regarded as a warm, bubbly, and highly popular young woman. At the age of 22, she married her college sweetheart, and the couple had 2 children, a daughter named Whitney and a son named Walter. However, by 1995, the marriage had deteriorated, leading to a divorce. Seeking a fresh start and a clean slate, Denise packed up her belongings and moved her children to the growing suburb of Little Elm, Texas, when she was 36 years old. In Little Elm, Denise found success, securing a lucrative position with a regional liquor distributor. She managed her finances carefully, eventually building a beautiful, spacious home for her family. Yet, despite her professional achievements and her devotion as a single mother, Denise still longed for a stable partner to share her life. That opportunity seemed to arrive. In 2003, when Officer Wayne Irby knocked on her door to politely warn her that her garage door had been left open, leaving her home vulnerable to local thefts. Wayne was a 37-year-old, 6-year veteran of the Little Elm Police
Department.
He was deeply passionate about his work, a man who, as his colleagues observed, truly bled blue. He was charismatic, friendly, and well-known on his beat. Not long after their initial meeting, Wayne returned to Denise's home to ask her out on a date. The chemistry between them was immediate, and they quickly became an exclusive couple. Wayne got along exceptionally well with Denise's children, and for a time, they appeared to be a happy, blended family. However, beneath the surface of this seemingly perfect relationship, significant friction was developing. Wayne was a naturally charming man, and his friendly demeanor with other women on his beat began to trigger intense jealousy in
Denise.
She frequently confronted him with accusations of infidelity, which Wayne vehemently denied. These trust issues began to erode the foundation of their relationship, creating a cycle of arguments and reconciliations. In 2004, in an attempt to solidify their commitment, the couple purchased a home together. Yet, living under the same roof only amplified their existing conflicts. Within a few months, the strain became too great, and Wayne decided to end the relationship, moving into a separate rental home across town. Despite the separation, they remained in contact. When Denise unexpectedly lost her job in November of that year, Wayne, not wanting her and the children to face financial ruin, agreed to reconcile and try to work through their differences. This reconciliation, however, was short-lived. On the morning of December 10th, 2004, Wayne failed to arrive at the police department for his 6:00 morning briefing because Wayne was a highly disciplined officer who was never late. His absence immediately caused concern among his colleagues, particularly Officer Cynthia Medrano. After several hours of unanswered calls, she raised her concerns with Police Chief Waylon Rhodes, who dispatched officers to conduct a welfare check at the home Wayne shared with Denise. When officers arrived at the residence, they found no vehicles in the driveway, and no one answered the door. They eventually made contact with Denise's children, Whitney and Walter, who revealed that they had not seen their mother or Wayne in nearly 24 hours. Whitney described a highly unusual, emotional telephone call she had received from her mother around midnight, in which Denise told her she was running errands, expressed her love, and instructed the children to get themselves ready for school in the morning. Concerned for the safety of both missing individuals, Detective Jerry Walker, who was Wayne's partner on the force, decided to search the rental property Wayne had previously leased, obtaining a key from the landlord, Walker, and Officer James when entered the empty house. In the kitchen, they made an ominous discovery. Wayne's personal fanny pack and his mobile phone were lying on the counter. For a police officer, leaving behind such essential personal items was a highly irregular and troubling sign. As they moved down the hallway, Officer Wynn turned a corner and immediately stopped, instructing Walker to stay back. Lying on the floor, was the body of Officer Wayne Irby. He had been shot once, almost directly in the center of the back of his head. There were no signs of a struggle or physical violence in the room, suggesting that Wayne had been ambushed and shot without warning. The discovery of Wayne's body transformed the missing persons case into a homicide investigation. Because Denise was still missing, investigators initially feared she might also be a victim of the same assailant. However, as crime scene investigators began to process both Wayne's rental home and the residence he shared with Denise, they began to uncover evidence that pointed in a much more disturbing direction. In the master bedroom of Denise's home, investigators discovered a handwritten note that appeared to have been written by Denise, containing language that strongly suggested she was contemplating ending her life. Furthermore, a search of the closet revealed that while Wayne's police uniforms and duty belt were present, the holster was empty and his service weapon was missing. The suspicion surrounding Denise intensified when investigators processed the kitchen of Wayne's rental home. On the kitchen island, they found a second handwritten note, clearly written by Denise. The note read, "I am sorry I took both of our lives. Please contact our mothers." This note functioned essentially as a written confession, indicating that Denise had taken Wayne's life and intended to take her own. As detectives investigated further into the couple's history, they discovered a prior domestic violence report from December 2003. Denise had filed a complaint against Wayne, claiming he had assaulted her after she discovered him at his rental home with another woman. The physical confrontation had left Wayne with significant scratches and a black eye. Although Denise later withdrew the complaint, claiming she had fabricated the details, the incident revealed a history of volatility and intense physical conflict driven by jealousy. On December 11, 2004, the regional broadcast alert regarding Denise's vehicle paid off when Gainesville police reported the shooting incident at the hotel. Upon entering the hospital where Denise was being treated, investigators sought to obtain a statement before her condition deteriorated. Further, Texas Ranger Tracy Murphy conducted a bedside interview, placing a recording device near her. When questioned about the events in Little Elm, Denise appeared highly
disoriented.
She was able to speak, but her cognitive abilities were severely compromised by the trauma of the gunshot wound. When Ranger Murphy asked her about Wayne, she claimed she did not know he was hurt and denied any memory of shooting him or herself. While she could recall basic details from before and after the incident, the specific window of time in which the homicide and the suicide attempt occurred seemed entirely absent from her memory. The physical consequences of Denise's self-inflicted wound were profound.
She
was left paralyzed on one side of her body and completely blind in one eye. While some investigators wondered if her memory loss was a convenient legal strategy, medical professionals noted that the severe trauma to her brain, combined with the high levels of alcohol and drugs in her system, could indeed produce genuine psychogenic amnesia. On December 13th, the medical examiner released the autopsy findings, confirming that Wayne Irby had died from a single wound inflicted by a .25 caliber bullet. Ballistics tests confirmed that this bullet had been fired from the same .25 caliber handgun found beside Denise in the hotel room. The weapon was registered to Denise's stepfather, indicating she had taken it with her to Wayne's home. Furthermore, investigators discovered Wayne's missing service weapon in the hotel room. An examination of the weapon showed that Denise had attempted to load the .40 caliber pistol, but had inserted a bullet backward, causing the mechanism to jam. It appeared that after her attempt to use Wayne's duty weapon failed, she turned to the .25 caliber handgun to shoot herself. On January 18, 2005, after recovering sufficiently to stand trial, Denise was officially charged with first-degree murder. Her trial began on July 10, 2006, in the Denton County Courthouse. Denise appeared in court in a wheelchair in a highly frail and weakened physical state. During the trial, the prosecution urged the jury not to be swayed by the defendant's physical disability, emphasizing that her condition was the direct result of her own actions after committing a brutal murder. The state presented a theory of a classic crime of passion, arguing that Denise had traveled to Wayne's home armed with her stepfather's handgun, confronted him about his decision to end the relationship, and shot him in the back of the head when he turned his back to walk away. To support their case, the prosecution introduced the 3 notes written by Denise, presenting them as clear, unambiguous confessions. The defense, however, argued that Wayne's death was a tragic accident. They pointed to a line in the 3rd, longer note found in her hotel room, which read, "I did not mean to do it. I freaked out and I ran." The defense argued that this dying declaration, written when Denise believed she was about to die, possessed a high degree of credibility. They further argued that if she had intended to commit murder, she would have fully loaded the weapon rather than leaving it partially loaded. To counter the accident theory, the prosecution introduced testimony from the State Crime Laboratory regarding the .25 caliber handgun. The forensic testing revealed that the weapon required approximately 4.5 to 5 pounds of pressure to pull the trigger, making an accidental discharge highly improbable. Furthermore, the prosecution argued that if the shooting had truly been an accident, Denise's natural response would have been to immediately contact emergency services to save Wayne's life, rather than taking his service weapon, writing confession notes, and fleeing the scene. On July 12, 2006, after less than an hour of deliberation, the jury returned a verdict of guilty. At her sentencing hearing, the defense requested leniency, pointing to her permanent physical disabilities as a form of ongoing punishment. The jury ultimately chose to spare her the death penalty, instead sentencing her to 62 years in prison, which practically functioned as a life sentence. From a psychological perspective, the case of Denise Miller illustrates the destructive power of pathological jealousy. When an individual's self-worth becomes entirely dependent on the possession of another person, any threat of abandonment can trigger a profound psychological crisis. In Denise's mind, the impending end of the relationship represented an intolerable loss of control.
By
taking Wayne's life and attempting to take her own, she sought to exercise the ultimate form of control over their shared destiny, ensuring that if she could not have him, no one else could. The smokescreen of jealousy and the anatomy of denial. The study of domestic homicide often reveals a pattern of escalating violence that culminates in an act of sudden, extreme brutality. In many cases, the perpetrator's primary objective shifts from controlling the partner to utterly erasing them. This psychological phenomenon was starkly demonstrated in the spring of 2007 in a case that deeply affected the community of Houston, Texas. On the evening of Wednesday, March 21st, 2007, investigator Sidney Miller and his partner were driving down a highway north of Houston. In the back seat of their police vehicle sat two individuals who were directing them to a specific location in connection with the disappearance of 19-year-old college freshman Tanisha Stewart. Tanisha had been missing since March 15th, and the tension among the investigators was palpable. Following the passenger's instructions, the detectives exited the highway and drove into the parking lot of a local apartment complex. The passenger directed them to a large waste dumpster located at the rear of the property. Fearing they were about to discover the young woman's remains, the detectives approached and peered inside. However, the dumpster was completely empty. It was yet another frustrating moment in an investigation that had already been marked by conflicting statements and a lack of physical evidence. Tanisha Stewart was a young woman of exceptional promise, raised in one of Houston's more challenging neighborhoods. She had lost her father at an early age, but remained deeply committed to her education. Her hard work had paid off. When she earned a prestigious academic scholarship to Texas Agricultural and Mechanical University, she was known for her bright intelligence, her independent spirit, and her warm relationship with her family, especially her sister Gayla. In May 2005, while working at a local pizza restaurant, the 17-year-old Tanisha met Timothy Shepard, a 25-year-old coworker. Despite the 8-year age difference, Tim was persistent in his efforts to pursue her, and they eventually began dating. Tim made an effort to integrate himself into Tanisha's family, assisting her mother with household chores and repairs, and eventually earning their trust as a reliable and caring partner. However, the dynamics of the relationship began to shift dramatically when Tanisha moved 2 hours away to attend university. While Tanisha was embracing her new independence and expanding her social circle, Tim grew increasingly possessive and insecure. The physical distance between them exacerbated his need for control. 3 months into her first semester, Tim briefly ended the relationship to pursue an old girlfriend, but quickly regretted the decision and traveled to the university campus to win Tanisha back. Although they resumed dating, the relationship was marked by growing friction. Tanisha had evolved, and she was no longer willing to accept Tim's controlling behavior. When she returned home for spring break in March 2007, she planned to spend time with her friends and attend a concert. Her sister, Gayla, recalled having a vivid, distressing dream during this time, in which Tanisha was harmed by jealous individuals and her body could not be found. Though Tanisha gently dismissed her sister's worries, the dream would prove to be a tragic premonition. On Sunday, March 18, 2007, Gayla received a frantic call from her mother, who revealed that no one had heard from Tanisha since Thursday. She had failed to attend the concert she had been looking forward to, and her mobile phone was going directly to voicemail. This behavior was entirely out of character for Tanisha, who maintained regular contact with her family. Sensing immediate danger, the family filed a formal missing persons report on Monday, March 19th. Investigators quickly identified Timothy Shepard as one of the last people to have seen Tanisha alive. They requested that he come to the police station for
questioning.
During the interview, Tim appeared cooperative, explaining that he had picked Tanisha up early Thursday morning and brought her back to his apartment. According to Tim, while they were at the apartment, Tanisha received a telephone call from a male college friend named Mark Marks. This call triggered an argument, as Tim demanded to know the nature of her relationship with Mark.
Tim
claimed that Tanisha refused to discuss the matter and eventually walked out of his apartment on Thursday morning, leaving on foot. He maintained that he had no knowledge of her whereabouts since that moment, because Tim's statement was consistent and he voluntarily provided written consent for investigators to search his apartment. Authorities initially found no legal basis to detain him. They returned his keys and turned their attention to Mark Marks, the young man who had called Tanisha on the morning of her disappearance. When detectives interviewed Mark Marks, they discovered that his relationship with Tanisha was much more significant than Tim had let on. Tanisha's close friend, Ashley Walton, confirmed that she had introduced Tanisha and Mark and that the two had been dating for about a month. Mark was deeply fond of Tanisha and was aware of her ongoing relationship with Tim. According to Mark, Tanisha had expressed a clear intention to end her relationship with Tim so that they could be together exclusively. Mark's statement placed him with Tanisha shortly before Tim picked her up on Thursday morning. Investigators wondered if Mark might have acted out of jealousy, but they quickly verified his alibi. Mark had been attending a social gathering with friends on South Padre Island at the time of Tanisha's disappearance, completely eliminating him as a suspect. With both primary associates seemingly cleared, investigators faced the distressing possibility that Tanisha had been abducted by a stranger after leaving Tim's apartment. They conducted extensive searches of the wooded areas surrounding the apartment complex, utilizing canine units.
During the search, a
resident reported hearing gunshots near the tree line on the night Tanisha disappeared. Although the search dogs did locate a scent, it led only to the remains of a deceased animal, leaving investigators with no new leads. As the search continued, Tanisha's family grew increasingly frustrated by the lack of progress. They organized volunteer search parties to knock on doors and interview residents in the area. During these inquiries, several neighbors made a highly unusual observation. They recalled that on the Friday and Saturday following Tanisha's disappearance, Tim Shepard had spent an extraordinary amount of time using 2 large barbecue grills on his patio. The smoke from the grills had been so dense and continuous that neighbors eventually contacted the fire department, fearing a structure fire. When firefighters and police officers arrived to address the smoke, Tim claimed he was preparing a massive quantity of meat for an upcoming church picnic, estimated to serve up to 200 people. Firefighters noted seeing